Game 3 obviously was last night, guys, and the Lightning came out. They took that one convincingly, like the two-time defending champs that they are. Still trail 2-1 in the series, though, Paul. What'd you think?
Well, you may say convincingly, but it took them about 59 and a half minutes to get the advantage in that game. Ultimately, the Rangers may well rue the fact that they blew an early 2-0 lead in this series, and they let the defending champs off the mat. And you only get to do that once, I think. I think that could be viewed as the turning point in the series, the fact that the Bolts came back and they actually dominated play with a decisive shot advantage in the second half of that game.
What about you, Geoff?
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, Tampa Bay obviously leaning on Nikita Kucherov big time, but it almost is like the perfect storm here. Like you could almost just see if you're saying, okay, well, the Rangers jumped out, they got on Tampa quick, but like now Tampa's won that close game, they've gotten over the hump, and now the Rangers have to go right back at it in Tampa Bay. It just feels like the storm is coming, So it's not looking great for the Rangers. It's weird to say because they still have home ice advantage. They're still up 2-1, but there's a very, very good chance, in my opinion, they're going to go back to New York, tied 2-2, and they're just going to get a 3-game series, which we know Tampa Bay is going to be very good. And Paul knows as a Leaf fan, Tampa Bay is pretty good in those scenarios. So this is just the Rangers got to find a way tonight, or tomorrow. They have to find a way, in my opinion, to get up 3-1 because I think if this goes 2-2. This series is it's not looking good for them.
What impresses me more than anything else, guys, and it's sort of a conversation for another day in more detail, but just the fact that, like teams in any sport aren't supposed to play this much and not show ill effects, not be tired. Like, again, the Lightning are coming off of 2 championships. There's supposed to be a Stanley Cup hangover or something like that. And here they are, obviously, in the conference finals, albeit down 2-1, but threatening to get right back there again. It's incredible. So what do the Bolts need to do ultimately here, Geoff, in game 4 to tie up this series?
I mean, I think for them, like the big thing is they got to get to Shesterkin early. Like they finally grabbed a win. Obviously, their streak was broken, but the big thing for them is if they can just rock this guy a little bit this game, I think that's really going to change the tone of the series. And I think that they were kind of on the cusp of doing it in game 3, but again, like Kucherov was all over the place, but if some of these other Tampa Bay guys get going too, that could really crack the confidence. So it sounds very easy, but basically, what the Lightning need is just scoring from different people, like somebody down the lineup for Tampa needs to just do something just to get this thing going. And I think once that happens, there's a very good chance that it's going to lead to like an avalanche of goals. So I think Tampa just needs a little bit more help down the lineup. Kucherov, Stamkos have been fine. They've actually been pretty hard to stop for the Rangers. They've just kind of been lucky that they haven't been going off every game that the Rangers have been. So I think Tampa just needs like one of those guys just to come through with a decent effort, get things going. And, they could be well on their way.
Good pun, but we're not on the Avs yet, Moose. Paul, last thing here on this series, obviously, are you on board with what Geoff talked about? More from the role players, more balanced attack?
I just think if Tampa starts the game the way they finished the last 2 periods of game 3, they'll be just fine. Look at Shesterkin has been on out of his mind in the last 8 or 9 games. In fact, his save percentage is over 93.5% in 8 of his last 9 starts. That's an incredible streak, and it's on him to continue that to give the Rangers a chance. And so that kind of stretch, it also has to end. People talked about the 18-0 after coming off a loss for Tampa. That ended. And so this streak that Shesterkin is on could also end. They're asking a lot of him to continue at this record clip of his. And that's just to keep them in the hunt. I think anything less than that stellar effort, and Tampa may run them out of the rink.
So for the other side of the bracket here, and we'll look ahead, obviously, to game 4, but let's look back at game 3 between the Oilers and the Avalanche. And Paul, we'll begin with you. It seemed like anytime the Oilers came out and made a statement, the Avs punched right back. What was the key there? Well,
I think as the game wore on, the Avs just seemed to pull away a little bit, and it's shown best in the shot advantage, 43-29 when you get to the end of the 60 minutes. And I thought this was a game that Edmonton was going to dominate, and the fact that they didn't come close to doing that overall, I hate to say this with Geoff on side, but you can stick a fork in the Oilers. I think they're done and may well be swept out of the playoffs tonight.
I enjoy saying those things more with Geoff actually on the call. It's to get the live reaction. Unlike the RBC Canadian Open, Geoff, this one is actually down the street from you. What did you think of Game 3, and what does that take you into Game 4?
Yeah, I mean, it was a good start for the Oilers, but even when they had jumped out to the 1-0 advantage, I mean, like Colorado was still out chancing them, and I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, if the Oilers had like pumped 50 shots in Game 3, might be able to sit here and say, well, if they can grab this one, you never know. But I don't know, man. I mean, at this point, like they've got the backup in net. They still can't get enough. Like they're still getting outshot even at home. Basically, I think that outside of like a Mike Smith, like 50 save, like out of nowhere performance here, this one is probably done, as Paul alluded to. I think that the Avalanche would very happily, try and take this one from Edmonton in 4. There's at the same time, like there's a lot of pride on the Oilers, and they really do have the high end scorers. So, the plus 115, looking at it and what the Oilers need to do tonight. I mean, it's interesting. I'm not quite sure where we want to go on the money line yet, but if Edmonton wants to win this game, like they need Draisaitl and McDavid basically to get them, like 4 or 5 goals in my opinion, because it's going to be almost impossible to limit Colorado to less than 3 at this point.
Independent of who ultimately ends up winning this game and whether the series ends, DraftKings has plenty of showdown contests available for DFS. If you had to pick one play, Geoff, doesn't even have to be the captain, just a great play here for this game tonight. Who is it?
Yeah, I mean, again, like when you're playing showdown, you got to think about how you think the game is going. And I think that if the Oilers do win, it's going to be not necessarily on the back of their goaltending. It's going to be on the back of like some kind of like multiple goal performance by Draisaitl or McDavid. You look at Leon Draisaitl. He's 13-5 in the captain spot. He's not even in like the top 5 or 6, like top ranked players in the salary structure. You're getting like pretty good value to stick him up there in the captain spot tonight. He's a lot cheaper than McDavid and McKinnon, and I think he brings just as much goal scoring upside. So Leon Draisaitl for me is the guy I would choose to captain. Again, you're playing for an Oilers victory here. You're playing for like a 5-goal breakout by their team. That's fine. If you don't think that that's going to happen, then you should probably go to the Colorado side and maybe look for a guy like, Mikko Rantanen or something like that at 12-9. Maybe Landeskog as well is in play. But I think Leon Draisaitl for me would be the target in showdown.
I assume, Paul, the consensus here at least is that it's going to be a stud, whichever side you're going.
I agree with that line of thinking. And while there's a strong temptation to take Nate McKinnon as your team captain in the showdown format, or maybe even Pavel Francouz if you expect Colorado to win, as I do, I go to Gabriel Landeskog. Geoff mentioned him. I'll tell you why it makes sense. To save some money there and still gain exposure to McKinnon in what should be another high-scoring affair, I'm going to have all 3 of these guys in my lineup, and I'll have at least 1 or 2. Probably Draisaitl is the guy I'm leaning to there. The Avs' second line has also been a contributing factor in this series, and to round out your squad, you got to get a couple of cheapies in there. So I'll fill out my roster with the addition of Arturi Lehkonen to add to the 3 points that he's contributed over the first 3 games of the series, and that'll cost me only $7,500 tonight.
Let's stay with the DraftKings Sportsbook, or go to the DraftKings Sportsbook, pardon me. We'll stay with you here, Pablo, on this game. If you're eyeing a great player prop that is available to you for this game, is it maybe an Oiler goal just out of desperation, knowing they're, just going to, I don't know, squeezing the stick a little bit tighter and all the different cliches you can put into an elimination game, or is there something else that jumps out at you more?
I think you got to look at the top 6 scorers on each team and pick the guy that you think is going to score. There's a couple of easy props here tonight, I think. I go to the assist prop, for instance, for Gabe Landeskog to pick up at least 1 helper to collect on a plus 125 payout there. And I don't expect the Oilers to go down without a fight, so I'll take McDavid to score a goal and pay off at plus 100.
What do you say, Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, Draisaitl, McDavid, I'll lean Draisaitl. Looking at his shot prop is actually something I like to do. Over 3.5 here tonight. Expecting at the very least these guys to just be a little bit more aggressive and trying to work their way to the net and getting shots towards it. I think Draisaitl at over 3.5 shots at plus 105, definitely worth a bet in this scenario. You can look down the lineup too, like in Colorado's side, sticking with the shot prop. I mean, like a guy like Valeri Nichushkin has been very good, but you're getting better odds, slightly better odds to go on Landeskog as well, minus 170, a player we've already talked about. So maybe as more of like a player, like a parlay or something, you could add in the Landeskog prop. But at over 2.5 shots there for Landeskog, I think that's definitely worth looking at. But I like centering player props around the Oilers studs tonight too. Paul mentioned the McDavid. to score a goal. I don't even mind taking like Draisaitl to score a goal and go over 3.5 shots. I think at the very least, you're going to see one of these guys score. And, just in the type of scenario, I at least like going for the volume with the shots with Draisaitl, who's got a smaller shot prop than McDavid right now. So
the big question tonight, obviously, is who's going to win. Will Colorado close this thing out, Geoff? You were talking about, maybe having a little bit of an internal debate as far as the money line. I want to know what the bet is tonight. Like, I was just looking at this, okay? One DK better opted to go under. A user placed $390,000. Must be nice to have that kind of spare change. $390,000 on under 7 goals at minus 130. That would return around just shy of $700,000 if there are less than 7 goals in this game tonight. What's your outlook, Geoff?
This is not a series I would be super confident in taking unders in, quite frankly. But I get that the trends over the last 2 games have been towards the under, but you've got to understand like that was with Colorado, kind of just playing like more of a shutdown version. And one of those games was in Colorado too. I think that there's a very good chance you're going to see the Oilers be a lot more aggressive tonight. And if they get out with a couple goals quickly, this over could absolutely hit by like the time the second period's done. So I think that the bet tonight is actually to bet the Oilers. I know I suggested like I don't want to be a homer on the show, and that you definitely have a little bit of a debate in terms of what you're recommending. But like a plus 115 with the Oilers still at home, you just get teams in this scenario. We see it so many times that they just play more freewheeling. And again, that also would probably lead me more towards the over in this game than the under. So hopefully for that better that we mentioned, I'm wrong in that scenario, but I'm going to say that the Oilers are the bet here. I think that there's still a good enough team here that they just shouldn't be getting swept. And we saw them play Colorado tough down the stretch. Now they're in a scenario where the pressure's basically off because there's no expectations when you're down 3-0. I do think they grab a win tonight. And I think Colorado closes it out in 5 games.
You don't have to let me be the homer on the show, Geoff. There's only room for so many of us. Paul, what's the eye? What's the play?
I'm taking the other side. Sorry, Geoff, but I look for Colorado to end things tonight. The Oilers, to me, looked very dispirited in their post-game interviews, understanding that they blew a great opportunity to get back in this series, no doubt realizing the fact that they're down 3-0 and not too many teams have ever come back from that deficit in the history of hockey playoffs. So I just think that they look like a defeated team, and if they get down early, it's going to be a long night in Edmonton. So the start is going to be key. I say for my bet tonight, I take Colorado to win, giving up 1.5 goals on the puck line to pay out at plus 170.